Hello, everyone. JDev of the JDev Entertainment Network has returned once again to give you exactly what you want, which of course would be more of me giving you guys and gals another Walking Dead predictions video. Now, before I get into the video topic of the predictions, I must state that if you don't want anything potentially spoiled, because these are predictions but that could lead to spoilers, or if you don't want to know anything, or if you're not caught up with The Walking Dead through Season 10 halfway point, I strongly suggest that you don't watch this video to avoid any forthcoming spoilers. So, Scott M. Gimple has been talking about recently that some of our dearly departed characters will be returning to The Walking Dead. Now, that could be in a dream sequence for just a one appearance, a hallucination scene, which we've seen before, or their very own standalone movie / made-for-TV movie, which I could see happening, obviously. So I'm just going to be giving my predictions mainly for the characters that could be in their own standalone movie. Obviously, the movie would have to take place before their demise, and just giving my predictions on who I think would be the likely candidates for that, and a couple of them who I think would be back for hallucination or dream sequences. So let's start with the most likely not for a TV or movie. Shane. Shane just made an appearance in The Walking Dead. I think it was perfect for him to be in Rick's final episode. Other than him returning for another hallucination scene with Rick in the Rick movies, I don't see Shane coming back to The Walking Dead. I'd love it, but I don't see there any point to make a movie about him, because the movie for this characters, because there might be more than one movie, would have to take place. It would have to be in the zombie apocalypse, and we've seen Shane's story since the zombie apocalypse. So Shane, unfortunately, is a no, although he could return in a hallucination scene. Dale. As much as I'd love to see Dale back in The Walking Dead, I just don't see where he would fit in at this point. We've seen his story since the zombie apocalypse started, unless they start from right when it started to how he meets up with, Daryl, TDog, Carol, and Shane, and Lori. There's a very small window there that we could see something regarding Dale, but I don't think that's enough to make a movie just talking about Dale, because then you have to cast all those people too, and I don't see it happening. So unfortunately, Dale, no. As far as a hallucination or dream sequence, I mean, the only character left, or characters left, that he could really influence right now would be Daryl or Carol, or, of course, possibly Rick in the Rick Grimes movies, which I don't see it happening, unfortunately. I don't see Jeffrey DeMunn coming back to the series. Carl. I do think Chandler Riggs will come back to The Walking Dead at some point for a hallucination or dream sequence, especially in the Rick Grimes movies. And we have, spoiler alert, Michonne leaving The Walking Dead very soon here. And I would probably expect to see Carl in that episode as a hallucination or dream sequence. It's just my thought, because that's Michonne's best friend. But as far as a Chandler Riggs, Carl Grimes movie, we've seen his story since the zombie apocalypse. So it would not make sense at all for a Carl Grimes movie, unfortunately. So Carl is not getting his own movie. I'd like to see it, but it's not happening. Glenn. Glenn is a character that would be definite for a hallucination or dream sequence, especially with Maggie or Rick, or maybe even Daryl or Carol. Probably not Carol. As far as his very own movie, we've already seen his story of the zombie apocalypse. I mean, those season 1 characters, it's very, very hard to do a movie about them, because we've seen their story. It's supposed to happen during the zombie apocalypse, so we've already seen Glenn, unless right when it happens, it's kind of the same Dale thing, where we see how he meets up with the group, Dale, Carol, Daryl, Merle, all of them, or T-Dog or whatever. But I don't see it happening as far as a movie, but I think we will see Glenn at some point again, probably in a Maggie or a Rick hallucination / dream sequence. T-Dog. Oh, T-Dog is great. We last saw T-Dog on we saw him in the 100th episode. We didn't see him in the episode, but we saw him host The Talking Dead, or he was somebody involved with that particular show. As far as last episode T-Dog was in, it was season 3, episode 4, Killer Within. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any way T-Dog is in The Walking Dead again. A movie, nobody cares about T-Dog anymore. And we've already seen his story, unless they show how, when this apocalypse started, to how he got, met up with Daryl and Dale and Shane and Lori. It just, there's not enough there. So TDog, I don't think we're ever going to see him again, at least on any show. Hershel. Well, unfortunately, the actor that played Hershel, if you didn't know already, Scott Wilson, recently died last year. So I don't see it possible for anything regarding Hershel again. It's unfortunate, unless they play like old audio clips or something like that. Maybe we hear his voice in a Maggie sort of thing or something like that, or even the Rick Grimes movies. But as far as seeing Scott Wilson again, unless it's footage that we haven't seen before meshed together, I don't think that's possible at this point, unfortunately. Beth. I don't think there's enough there for Beth. I mean, granted, she wasn't a season 1 character, so it could work, showing her from the start of the zombie apocalypse till Rick Grimes getting to the farm. But I just don't, you have to have Hershel in that movie, you have to have Maggie in that movie, and with Scott Wilson dead, you have to have Patricia and Jimmy. I don't think there's enough demand for Beth's character, unfortunately. So those are all the characters that I don't think would have a movie, but could potentially have hallucination scenes. And Beth, I guess she could have a hallucination scene for like a Daryl episode, or of course a Maggie thing. So I would rule that out for Beth. And in fact, I think she will be in The Walking Dead again as far as a dream sequence or hallucination. So here are the people that I think are most likely for the movie, or standalone movie / TV, made-for-TV movie, and then my thoughts on that. So I think the most likely character that would have their own movie, or at least a movie with them in it, would be Abraham. Because Abraham, we didn't see him until the middle of the tail end of season 4 of The Walking Dead, and there's more story there. And then what you could do is you could have Eugene and Rosita in that particular movie. Now, Rosita, we don't know what her, spoiler alert, is going to happen to her this season. She's one of the characters that could easily die. She's had a lot of time on the show, and they need a big death for season 10, at least the second half of season 10. So that could happen. And I don't know if it's going to, but I could see, in fact, I think it's a guarantee that Abraham is in some sort of movie. Not just a hallucination scene, and he could be in that too. Especially like Rosita's final episode, if she has a final episode, which I don't know yet. I could absolutely see Abraham in that particular episode. Hopefully a lot, too. Next up, we have Jesus. Now, Jesus didn't get into The Walking Dead until the second half of season 6. So there's a lot of potential there for a Jesus movie, or a movie with him as a character in it. But the problem is, do we really want to see a Jesus movie? I'm sorry, but his character on The Walking Dead just wasn't big enough. It wasn't important enough. He was kind of a wasted character. They could have done a lot more with Jesus, and they did. So I don't see it happening. Obviously, Tom Payne could come back, down the road in some sort of dream sequence or hallucination scene. But as far as his own movie or something like that, I don't see it happening. I guess it could, but I just don't think it would be interesting enough for them to even explore that option. Next up, of course, we already talked about Rosita. I think it's possible that she could have her own movie if her character meets her demise. And obviously she could be in somebody's hallucination sequence as well, or dream sequence as well. The Governor. The Governor is a very interesting one. We obviously would love to see The Rise of the Governor, which was a comic book. And I think it's very likely that the Governor would return at some point in his own movie. But the problem with that is I just don't know if it would be interesting enough. It could, but his character hasn't been on the show since season 5? So, is that right? Season 5, or is it? I don't even remember. I think it was season 5, episode 8. No, episode 9. Tyreese's death episode. So that was the last time we saw the Governor, and that was just in a hallucination scene for Tyreese. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's very possible that his character could come back, but it's been a long time, and David Morrissey's not getting any older or any younger. So, yeah, if they want to do it, they better do it soon. That's what I'd have to say about that. We have Gareth. Now, there's an interesting character that they could have a movie on, but would it be interesting enough? I don't think anybody cared about Gareth. That's one of the people from Terminus the main guy at Terminus. But it's a story that you could tell, and people would be interested by it. But I don't know if it's interesting enough to actually make the movie itself. But you never know. It's one of those characters that people forget about that could easily pop up again, but it has to be in their own standalone movie, or maybe somebody else's movie, and they're in it somehow, some way. Here's another likely candidate that people forget about. Merle. I think it's very possible that we see Merle in The Walking Dead again in a hallucination scene or a dream sequence in some sort of Daryl episode. Now, as far as Merle having his own movie, I actually think that could happen. Because Merle, you could do a story with him and Daryl before the apocalypse, or right when the apocalypse started, to how they met Dale, Carol, TDog, Glenn, Shane, Lori, Carl. Or what you could do is focus on Merle when he's on the roof and they leave to how he gets to Woodbury, and at that point becomes the governor's right-hand man. You could do a movie on that, and people would care because it's Merle. And then Daryl would have to be in it somehow, some way. It's like maybe Merle hallucinates Daryl, and you could put the governor in it. So maybe you could combine those two stories. So that could potentially work. And I think it's very likely, actually, because he's not doing any more Guardians movies, so he needs something else to do. So that could work. Simon. I don't think people would care enough about Simon for him to even come back in The Walking Dead, but the actor is actually pretty funny. And I could see him being in a hallucination scene or dream sequence in some sort of Negan episode. And I do think Negan will get his own movie at some point, or made-for-TV movie, I should say. But as far as Simon having his own movie, he would potentially be in the Negan movie, like the Rise to Power of Negan. But his own movie, not happening. Bob. Does anybody even really remember Bob? He was in season 4. He was like the medic guy that started, doing some hanging out with Sasha. Bob just wasn't that interesting. We didn't get his full story. We should have, but he got killed off pretty quickly. I don't see Bob getting his own movie, and at this point, I don't really even see him having a dream sequence or a hallucination scene, simply because nobody was really tied to Bob that much that's still around. So if he came back, it would just not make much sense, but who knows? He's a guy that's out there, though. Andrea. I think, again, you could do an Andrea movie. You could. It's very unlikely, but again, it's starting from the apocalypse to how she met up with everybody. How she met up with TDog, Morales, Merle, and Glenn. But, there's not a lot of room there. Or what you could do is have a movie with her, the events after season 2 of The Walking Dead into season 3. So from when she was at the farm to when Michonne saves her to when they get to Woodbury. You could focus on that. I don't know if there's enough there for that, but it's possible. I don't remember how much time went by, but it's definitely possible. Now, spoiler alert, Michonne is about to have her final episode, at least for now. They haven't said it's her last episode ever. I expect to see an Andrea hallucination or dream sequence in that final episode, or one of those final episodes. I think that would be perfect, because Andrea, we haven't seen her in the show since season 3, episode 16, and I think it would just be perfect to have her back in Michonne's final episode. But as far as her own movie, yeah, I guess it's possible with that time in between the farm and Woodbury, but it's very unlikely. And also, Sasha and Tyreese. Now, there's 2 characters. They would be in the same movie because they were brother and sister. And I guess you could have a movie with them, too, in it, because they didn't get into The Walking Dead until the midway point of season 3. I don't know if people would think it's interesting enough, though, but it's possible you could have a Sasha/Tyreese movie. As far as them returning to The Walking Dead, I don't know if anybody would really care if they were in an episode like a hallucination scene or a dream sequence. I don't know. Tyreese could have been a much better character, and they kind of made him weak in the TV series, but I guess it's possible. I don't know who they really would show up for, but I don't know. I would probably rule that out, but they have, they weren't in the show right away, so there's potential there for a movie, but I just don't know if it's interesting enough. The interesting characters are Merle and Abraham, as far as their own movie, and the governor, but he's not getting any younger, so maybe they'd have to recast the governor. And then the last character I included would be Morales. Obviously, Morales was in season 1 of The Walking Dead in a few episodes, and then we didn't see him until his demise in season 8 of The Walking Dead. I think that could be an interesting story, but again, does anybody really care? Like, okay, the fanatics will care about Morales, but everybody else, like we want random people that casually watch The Walking Dead to watch that movie, and I just don't think there would be enough of a demand for it. But obviously, there's definite potential there for Morales to show back up in a Walking Dead movie with all the time that he was away for. But I don't think he's interesting enough, and I just don't think people would care. At least the casual fans would care. So those are my predictions. And obviously, we have a character showing back up in Fear the Walking Dead. I don't know if it's been 100% confirmed, but the lady, the actress has been on the set of Fear the Walking Dead, and that's Sherry, who is returning most likely to The Walking Dead. So leave your thoughts on the video. Go ahead and like the video if you're a fan of The Walking Dead. Subscribe to the channel if you want to get updates on my random videos that come out. Make sure you get alerts and notifications. And yeah, leave me a comment telling me what you think. Anything. And of course, JDev will be back again soon with another. Peace.